The dust came first, not the sound of hooves or the rattle of wheels, just dust, rising thin and slow against the falling sun, like something ashamed to announce itself. Cole Masson saw it from the porch of the trading post, one boot on the rail, a tin cup cooling in his hand. He'd been standing there longer than he meant to, watching the valley turn orange and the shadows stretch long across the flats. Thinking about nothing, thinking about leaving. The dust didn't belong. It moved wrong, too slow, too uncertain. A rider would have come straight, a wagon would have held the trail. This thing wavered, like it might collapse before it reached him. He set the cup down and straightened. By the time the shape came into view, the sun had dropped another handspan, and the light had gone strange. That copper glow that made everything look like it was burning from the inside. The figure was small, walking, not riding, leading something behind. Cole's hand drifted to his belt, not for his gun, but just to touch the worn leather there. The habit of a man who'd learned to check what was real. The figure stopped 50 yards out. A girl, maybe 12, maybe younger. Her dress was torn at the hem, dusty to the knees, and she held the lead rope of a mule that looked older than the territory itself. The animal's head hung low, ribs showing through patchy hide. The girl didn't move forward. She just stood there, staring at the post like it might vanish if she blinked. Cole stepped off the porch. He walked slow, hands loose at his sides, the way you approach a spooked horse. When he got close enough to see her face, he stopped. Her eyes were dry, but red-rimmed. Dust streaked her cheeks in lines that might have been tears once. She didn't look at him. She looked past him, at the post, at the door, at the window where lamplight was just starting to show. "You lost?" Cole asked. She didn't answer. He crouched down, bringing himself level with her. "You got people? Somebody looking for you?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she swallowed, and when she spoke, her voice was small and flat, like something that had been used up. "They hurt my brother." Cole went still. The wind picked up, stirring the dust around their feet, and for a moment neither of them moved. The mule shifted its weight, the lead rope going taut in the girl's hand, and Cole saw the rawness of her palm where the rope had burned. "Where is he?" Cole asked quietly. She turned then, looking back the way she'd come, and Cole followed her gaze. The valley stretched out empty, fading into dusk. No movement, but the wind in the scrub grass. "I left him," she whispered. "I had to leave him." Cole felt something tighten in his chest. He stood scanning the horizon, then looked back down at her. "How far?" "I don't know." "Was he breathing?" She nodded, quick and small. "How many were there?" "3." Her voice cracked. "Maybe 4. I don't know. They came to the camp and Papa tried to—" She stopped, her throat working. Papa didn't get up. Cole's jaw tightened. He glanced back at the post, then at the girl, then at the mule that looked like it couldn't walk another mile if you paid it. "What's your name?" "Lily." "Lily, I'm Cole." He paused, choosing his words. "You did right coming here. You understand? You did the only thing you could." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her face crumpled. Not crying, just the collapse of whatever had been holding her upright. Cole pulled off his hat. It was old, sweat-stained around the band, the brim bent from years of sun and rain. He held it out to her, and she stared at it like she didn't understand. "You take this," he said. "You're not alone now." She took the hat with both hands, holding it against her chest, and Cole saw her fingers tremble. "Come on," he said, taking the mule's lead. "Let's get you inside." The trading post belonged to a man named Pharaoh, a thick-shouldered Swede who asked few questions and kept a scattergun under the counter. When Cole pushed through the door with the girl behind him, Pharaoh looked up from his ledger, took one look at her face, and set down his pen. "She needs water," Cole said, "and food if you've got it." Pharaoh nodded once and disappeared into the back. Cole led Lily to a chair near the stove and eased her into it. She sat stiff-backed, still clutching the hat, her eyes darting to the door, the window, the shadows in the corners. Pharaoh returned with a tin cup and a plate of cornbread. He set them on the table without a word, then looked at Cole. "Trouble?" "Her camp got hit, Cole said quietly. Her brother's out there. Pharaoh's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Where? She doesn't know. Walked here on foot. Could be 10 miles, could be 20. I know. Pharaoh looked at the girl, then back at Cole. You thinking what I think you're thinking? I'm thinking a boy's lying out there hurt, and it's getting dark. You're thinking of riding out blind. I'm thinking I don't have a choice. Pharaoh exhaled through his nose, a sound like a bull settling. You don't even know if he's still alive. Cole didn't answer. He turned back to Lily, who'd drunk half the cup and was staring at the cornbread like she'd forgotten what it was. Lily, Cole said gently, I need you to tell me everything you remember. The land, the trail, anything. She set the cup down, her hands shaking. There were rocks, big ones, like a jaw. A jaw. That's what Papa called it, the jaw. He said we'd camp there because of the wind. Pharaoh leaned forward. Devil's Jaw, I know it. 20 miles west, maybe more. Near the old stage route. Cole looked at him. You got a horse I can borrow? I got a horse you can buy. Pharaoh, I'm not running charity, Madsen. You want the horse? You pay for the horse. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded wad of bills, everything he had left from the last job. He set it on the counter. Pharaoh counted it without expression, then nodded. Saddle's out back. Don't get yourself killed. Cole started for the door, then stopped. He looked back at Lily, who was watching him with wide, unblinking eyes. I'll find him, Cole said. She stood up, still holding the hat, and her voice came out stronger this time. Promise. Cole met her gaze and felt the weight of it, the kind of weight that doesn't let go. I promise. He turned and walked out into the dying light, and behind him, the door swung shut with a sound like a closing chapter. The horse Pharaoh sold him was a gray mare with a white blaze and a temperament that suggested she'd been cheated before. She tested Cole twice before they cleared the post, once with a sideways hop, once by refusing to take the bit properly. But after that, she settled into a long, ground-eating trot that suited them both. The night came fast. Out here it always did. One moment the sky was bruised purple, the next it was black and full of stars that looked like they'd been scattered by a careless hand. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of sage and something older, something that made Cole think of bones and empty places. He rode west, following the old stage road by memory and the faint ruts still visible in the dirt. The mare's hooves made a steady rhythm, and Cole let his mind settle into it, not thinking, just moving. Just following the thread of a promise he'd made to a girl whose last name he didn't even know. It was past midnight when he saw the rocks. They rose out of the flat land like broken teeth, two massive slabs leaning toward each other, and in the moonlight they did look like a jaw that had been pried open and left that way. Cole slowed the mare to a walk, his hand moving to the revolver on his hip, and he scanned the shadows between the rocks. Nothing moved. He dismounted 20 yards out and led the mare forward on foot, his boots silent in the dust. The camp was there, just inside the mouth of the jaw. The remains of it anyway. A wagon tipped on its side, one wheel missing. A scatter of belongings. Tin plates, a blanket, a Bible with its pages torn and flapping in the wind. And blood. Dark stains in the dirt. Drag marks leading toward the rocks. Cole tied the mare to a scrub bush and moved in low, his eyes adjusting to the deeper shadows. He found the man first. The father, he assumed. Face down near the overturned wagon, one arm stretched out like he'd been reaching for something. Cole didn't need to check for a pulse. The stillness told him everything. He moved past toward the rocks. Boy, he called softly. You hear me? Nothing. Your sister sent me. Lily, she's safe. A sound then, small, choked, somewhere to the left. Cole turned and saw him. The boy was wedged between two boulders, half hidden in shadow, his legs pulled up tight against his chest. His face was pale, slick with sweat, and his shirt was dark with blood from a wound Cole couldn't see yet. He couldn't have been more than 10. Easy, Cole said, moving closer. I'm not here to hurt you. The boy's eyes tracked him, wide and glassy, but he didn't speak. Cole knelt beside him and gently pulled the shirt away from the wound. a deep gash along the ribs, still bleeding but not gushing. Bad but not fatal. Not yet. The boy whimpered as Cole pressed a hand against it, applying pressure. "What's your name?" The boy's lips moved. "Samuel." "All right, Samuel. I'm Cole. I'm going to get you out of here, but I need you to stay quiet. Understand?" Samuel nodded, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Cole tore a strip from his own shirt and bound the wound as best he could, working fast. The boy bit down on his lip to keep from crying out, and when Cole tied off the bandage, Samuel's head lolled back against the rock. "They took Mama," Samuel whispered. Cole froze. "What?" "The men. They took Mama. She was screaming." Cole's stomach turned cold. He looked back toward the wagon, then out at the empty land beyond. "How long ago?" "I don't know. Before dark." "Before dark. Hours then. Maybe 6. Maybe 8. A woman on horseback with men who'd already killed once. She could be anywhere by now. Or nowhere." Cole felt the old weight settle on him again, the weight he'd tried to leave behind in a dozen towns across the territory. He looked down at Samuel, at the boy's pale face and the blood seeping through the makeshift bandage, and he thought about Lily waiting back at the post, holding his hat like it was a contract. "All right," Cole said quietly. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm taking you back. Your sister's waiting." "But Mama—" "I know." Cole's voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. "I know, but I can't track in the dark. And you need a doctor. I get you safe. Then I come back. That's the only way." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. She was screaming. Cole closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. "I'll find her. But first I keep my promise to your sister." He lifted Samuel as gently as he could, and the boy gasped but didn't cry out. Cole carried him to the mare and lifted him into the saddle, then swung up behind him, holding him steady with one arm. The ride back was slow. Samuel drifted in and out of consciousness, his head lolling against Cole's chest, and twice Cole had to stop to check the bandage. The sky was just starting to pale when they reached the post, and Pharaoh was already outside, leaning against the doorframe with a cigarette burning between his fingers. He took one look at the boy and dropped the cigarette. "Inside," Cole said. They carried Samuel in together and laid him on the cot in the back room. Lily appeared in the doorway, her face white, and when she saw her brother, she ran to him, dropping to her knees beside the cot. "Samuel," she whispered, gripping his hand. His eyes fluttered open. "Lily." She pressed her forehead against his and started to cry. Not loud, just a soft, broken sound that filled the room. Cole stepped back, giving them space, and Pharaoh pulled him aside. "He going to make it?" "If we get him to a dock, there's one in Ashford, 2 days south." "And the mother?" Cole didn't answer right away. He looked at Lily, at the way she held her brother's hand, and then he looked back at Pharaoh. "They took her." Pharaoh's expression darkened. "You know where?" "No, but I know which way they were headed." "You going after her?" Cole turned toward the door, toward the gray light of dawn creeping across the valley. "I gave the girl my word." Pharaoh was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You gave her your word you'd find the boy. You did that." "I gave her more than that." Cole looked back at him. "I gave her my hat." Pharaoh almost smiled. "That's supposed to mean something?" "It means I'm not done." He walked out into the dawn, and behind him Lily's voice called out, small and clear. "Bring her back." Cole stopped in the doorway, his back to her, and he didn't turn around. "I will," he said, and then he was gone. Cole rode back to the jaw as the sun climbed. The land changed in daylight, less forgiving, more honest. The rocks didn't look like teeth anymore. They just looked old, indifferent. The kind of monuments that would still be standing long after everyone who passed through was dust. He found the tracks where he'd expected them, leading north from the camp. 4 horses, maybe 5, moving at a steady pace. Not running, not hiding. Men who didn't think they'd be followed. Cole followed. The trail led across open country for miles, then veered west toward a line of low hills studded with juniper and scrub pine. The sun was high and hot by the time Cole reached the hills, and the mare was lathered and blowing hard. He dismounted and led her into the shade of a rocky outcrop, letting her drink from his canteen while he studied the land ahead. Smoke, thin and gray, rising from somewhere beyond the next ridge. Cole checked his revolver, made sure the cylinder was full, then swung back into the saddle. He rode slow, keeping to the low ground, and when he crested the ridge, he stopped. A camp. 4 men sat around a fire, passing a bottle between them. Their horses were picketed nearby, and beyond them, tied to a tree with her hands bound in front of her, was a woman. Her dress was torn, her hair loose and tangled, but she was sitting upright, her chin lifted. Her eyes fixed on the men with a look that wasn't fear, it was calculation. Cole dismounted and tied the mare out of sight, then moved forward on foot, using the rocks and brush for cover. He got within 30 yards before he stopped, crouched behind a boulder, and studied the camp. The men were rough, trail scum, the kind who hired out for dirty work and drifted from town to town when the law got too close. 2 of them wore dusters, one had a knife on his belt that looked like it had seen use, and the 4th, the biggest one, had a shotgun resting across his knees. Cole counted the odds and didn't like them. 4-1 open ground and a woman in the middle of it. If he went in shooting, she'd be the first one hit. If he waited, they might move her, and he'd lose his chance. If he did nothing, he pushed the thought away. There was a narrow draw to the east leading down to the camp from higher ground. If he could get above them, he might have a clean line without exposing the woman. It would take time, and time meant risk. But it was the only play he had. He started moving. The draw was steeper than it looked, loose rock and thorny brush that grabbed at his boots and made every step a gamble. Twice he froze as a stone skittered down the slope. But the men below didn't look up. They were deep in the bottle now, laughing at something one of them said, and the woman watched them with that same steady gaze. Cole reached the top of the draw and bellied down behind a low shelf of rock. From here, he could see the whole camp, the men, the fire, the woman tied to the tree. The biggest man, the one with the shotgun, had his back to Cole. The others were spread out, careless. Cole drew his revolver and rested it on the rock, sighting down the barrel. Then the woman moved. She shifted her weight, leaning forward slightly, and one of the men, the one with the knife, looked over at her. He said something Cole couldn't hear, and the woman spat at him. The man lunged. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked her head back, and the woman screamed, not in fear, but in rage, and she kicked him hard in the shin. He swore and raised his hand to strike her. And that's when Cole fired. The shot cracked across the camp, and the man with the knife went down, clutching his shoulder. The other men scattered, grabbing for their guns, and Cole fired again, aiming for the big man with the shotgun. The round caught him in the side, and he dropped, the shotgun clattering to the ground. The remaining 2 dove for cover, returning fire, and bullets whined off the rocks around Cole's head. He ducked back, reloading, and when he rose again, one of the men was running for the horses. Cole shot him in the leg. The man went down hard, screaming, and the last one, the one in the duster, froze, his gun half raised, his eyes wide. "Drop it!" Cole called out. The man hesitated. "I said drop it." The gun hit the dirt. Cole rose and started down the slope, his revolver trained on the man in the duster. The woman was still tied to the tree, breathing hard, her eyes locked on Cole as he approached. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, quick and tight. Cole reached her and cut the ropes with his knife, and she stumbled forward, catching herself against the tree. He steadied her with one hand, then looked back at the man in the duster. "Who sent you?" The man didn't answer. "I'm not asking twice." "Nobody sent us," the man said quickly. "We just saw the camp. Thought you'd what? Kill a man and take his family?" The man swallowed hard. "It wasn't supposed to go like that." Cole felt something cold settle in his chest. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Where were you taking her?" "Nowhere, we were just—" "Where?" The man's eyes darted to the woman, then back to Cole. "There's a place 2 days north. They buy people." Cole's jaw tightened. He looked at the woman, who was staring at the man with murder in her eyes. "My husband," she said, her voice shaking. "Where is he?" The man didn't answer, and the woman lunged at him. Cole caught her, holding her back. and she fought against him for a moment before collapsing, her strength giving out. "He's dead," Cole said quietly. "I'm sorry." She made a sound like something breaking, and Cole held her until she stopped shaking. Then he looked at the man in the duster, and his voice was flat. "Get out of here. If I see you again, I won't ask questions." The man didn't wait. He grabbed his horse and rode, and the sound of hooves faded into the hills. Cole turned back to the woman. "Your children are safe. They're waiting for you." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Then she nodded, just once, and Cole helped her to her feet. The ride back was silent. They reached the post in the evening, when the light was soft and the shadows stretched long across the valley. The woman, her name was Anna, she'd told him quietly during the ride, had barely spoken since they left the camp, but her hands had stopped shaking, and when the post came into view, she straightened in the saddle. Lily saw them first. She was sitting on the porch steps, still wearing Cole's hat, and when she recognized her mother, she stood so fast she nearly fell. Then she was running, her feet kicking up dust, and Anna slid from the horse and caught her daughter in her arms. They sank to the ground together, holding each other, and neither of them made a sound. Just held on, like they were afraid the other might disappear. Cole dismounted and led the mare to the post, where Pharaoh was leaning in the doorway, arms crossed. "She all right?" Pharaoh asked. "She will be." Pharaoh nodded toward the porch. "Boy's inside, sleeping mostly. Fever broke an hour ago." Cole felt something loosen in his chest. "Good." He walked past Pharaoh and into the post, where Samuel was lying on the cot, his face pale but peaceful. Cole stood there for a moment, watching the boy's chest rise and fall, then turned and walked back outside. Anna was on her feet now, one arm around Lily's shoulders. When she saw Cole, she stepped forward, her eyes red but clear. "You brought them back," she said. Cole shook his head. "Your daughter did. She walked 20 miles to find help. I just followed through." Anna looked down at Lily, and something passed between them. A look Cole couldn't name but understood anyway. "Thank you," Anna said, and her voice broke on the words. Cole nodded once, then looked at Lily. "I'll need my hat back." Lily took it off slowly, holding it with both hands, and for a moment she just stared at it. Then she held it out, and Cole took it, turning it over in his hands. The brim was bent, the band stained with sweat and dust, and it felt heavier than it had before. He looked at Lily, at the way she stood a little taller now, and he set the hat back on her head. "Keep it," he said. "You earned it." Lily's eyes went wide, and she touched the brim with her fingertips, like she was making sure it was real. "But it's yours," she said. "Not anymore." Anna wiped her eyes and stepped forward. "We don't have much, but—" "I don't need payment," Cole said. "Just make sure they see a doctor. Ashford's 2 days south. Pharaoh can give you directions." Anna nodded, and for a moment no one spoke. The wind stirred the dust around their feet, and somewhere in the distance a hawk cried out. "Where will you go?" Anna asked. Cole looked out at the valley, at the endless stretch of land fading into twilight. "I don't know yet." "You have family?" "Not anymore." Anna was quiet for a moment, then she said, "You could stay, just for tonight. Let us give you a meal at least." Cole started to refuse, then stopped. He looked at Lily, still wearing his hat, and at Samuel inside, sleeping soundly, and something in him softened. "All right," he said. "One meal." They ate outside on the porch as the stars came out. Pharaoh brought out cornbread and beans, and Anna made coffee over a small fire, and they sat together in the cooling air, not saying much, just existing in the same space. Lily sat next to Cole, her legs swinging off the edge of the porch, and after a while she said, "Will you teach me to ride?" Cole looked at her. "You don't know how." "Papa was going to teach me, but he—" She trailed off. Cole set his plate down. "I can show you the basics. Won't make you a wrangler, but it'll keep you in the saddle." Lily grinned, and it was the first real smile Cole had seen from her. They spent the next hour in the corral behind the post, with Lily on the gray mare, and Cole walking beside her, one hand on the bridle. She was tentative at first, gripping the saddle horn too tight, but after a few circuits she started to relax. her back straightening, her hands loosening. "There you go," Cole said. "Just move with her. Don't fight it." Lily nodded, focused, and by the time the moon was high, she was walking the mare in circles on her own, her face flushed with pride. Anna watched from the porch, her arms wrapped around herself, and when Lily finally dismounted, breathless and beaming, Anna pulled her close. "Thank you," Anna said to Cole, and this time there was no weight in it, just gratitude. Cole nodded and looked away, uncomfortable with the warmth in her voice. Later, when Lily and Anna had gone inside to check on Samuel, Pharaoh joined Cole by the corral, a cigarette burning between his fingers. "You did a good thing," Pharaoh said. Cole didn't answer. "You don't have to keep running, you know." "I'm not running." "Then what do you call it?" Cole looked out at the dark valley, at the stars scattered across the sky, and he thought about all the towns he'd left, all the faces he'd walked away from. "I call it moving forward." Pharaoh exhaled smoke and shook his head. "Looks the same from where I'm standing." Cole didn't argue. He just stood there, listening to the night sounds. And after a while, Pharaoh went back inside. Cole stayed. He stood in the cool air, his hands resting on the corral fence. And he thought about a girl who'd walked 20 miles with a promise, and a boy who'd held on when he should have died, and a woman who'd looked at him like he was something more than just a drifter with a gun. And for the first time in a long time, he wondered if maybe Pharaoh was right. Maybe he'd been running after all. Cole left before dawn. He didn't say goodbye. Goodbyes had a way of turning into something heavier than he wanted to carry. He just saddled the mare in the quiet dark, checked his gear, and rode out while the stars were still bright overhead. He made it a mile before he heard the hoofbeats behind him. Cole reined in and turned, his hand moving instinctively toward his revolver. But it was just the gray mare's silhouette against the paling sky, and on her back, Lily. She rode up beside him, wearing his hat, her face set with determination. "You're supposed to be sleeping," Cole said. "You're supposed to say goodbye." Cole sighed and looked away. "I'm not good at that." "I know." Lily adjusted the hat on her head. "Mama said you'd leave early. She said men like you always do. Men like me. Men who think they don't belong anywhere." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your mama's a smart woman. She also said to give you this." Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She held it out and Cole took it, unfolding it carefully. Inside was a drawing, crude but clear, of a man on a horse, and next to him a girl wearing a hat. At the bottom in careful letters it said, "Thank you for keeping your promise." Cole stared at it for a long time. "Samuel drew it," Lily said. "He woke up last night and asked for paper. Said he wanted you to have it." Cole refolded the paper and slipped it into his shirt pocket over his heart. "You tell him I said thanks. You could tell him yourself." "I could, but you won't." Cole looked at her, at the way she sat straight in the saddle, her chin lifted, and he realized she wasn't asking him to stay. She was just making sure he knew he could. "Your family needs you," Cole said. "They need you strong. You keep that hat, you hear me? When things get hard, you remember what you did. You walked 20 miles to save your brother. Most grown men wouldn't have the courage for that." Lily's eyes shone, but she didn't cry. She just nodded. "And Lily?" "Yeah? You ever need help again, real help, you find a man named Garrett in Ashford. You tell him Cole Madsen sent you. He'll take care of you. You trust him? With my life." Lily nodded again, then reached up and touched the brim of the hat. "I'll keep it safe." "I know you will." She turned the mare back toward the post, then paused. "Will I see you again?" Cole looked out at the horizon, at the endless stretch of land waiting for him, and he thought about the question he'd been avoiding for months. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But if you do, I'll be the one wearing a new hat." Lily smiled, a real smile, bright and unguarded. And then she was riding back, the mare's hooves soft in the dust. Cole watched until she was a shadow against the post, and then he turned and rode on. The weeks that followed blurred together. Cole drifted south, then west, taking odd jobs where he could. Ranch work, escort duty, one stint as a temporary deputy in a town too small to have a name. He kept moving, kept his head down, and tried not to think about the piece of paper folded in his pocket or the girl who'd made him promise something he'd thought he couldn't give. But the promises had a way of following you. One evening, 2 months after he'd left the post, Cole rode into Ashford just as the sun was setting. He hadn't planned on it. He'd been heading for the border, thinking maybe Mexico would feel different. But something pulled him off the trail, and before he knew it, he was standing outside the doctor's office on Main Street. Through the window, he could see them. Anna sitting in a chair by the door, mending something in her lap. Samuel, thinner but standing, laughing at something someone had said. And Lily, still wearing the hat, bent and faded now, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, looking for all the world like someone who'd learned how to stand her ground. Cole stood there for a long time, just watching. Then Anna looked up, and their eyes met through the glass. She stood slowly, setting down her mending, and walked to the door. She opened it, stepped outside, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "You came back," she said. "I was passing through." "You're a terrible liar." Cole almost smiled. "How are they?" "Strong. Samuel's still healing, but the doctor says he'll be fine. Lily's—" Anna paused, her expression softening. "Lily's becoming someone I hardly recognize. She doesn't scare easy anymore." Cole nodded and something in his chest loosened. "And you?" he asked. "I'm managing. Garrett's been helping. He found me work at the general store. We'll be all right." She studied his face. "What about you?" Cole looked down the street, at the fading light and the long shadows, and he realized he didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, and it just wasn't the one he'd expected. "I don't know yet," he said. Anna stepped closer. "You could stay, just for a while. There's work here, and—" She hesitated. "And we'd like to have you." Cole looked back at the window, at Lily and Samuel inside, and he thought about all the places he'd been, all the towns he'd ridden through, and how none of them had ever felt like something worth stopping for. Until now. "Maybe," he said quietly. "Maybe I could." Anna smiled, a small, cautious thing, and nodded. "That's a start." She turned and went back inside, and through the window Cole saw her say something to Lily. The girl looked up, saw him standing there, and her face broke into a grin. She grabbed the hat off her head and held it up, like a salute, and Cole touched the brim of his new one in return. Then he turned and walked down the street toward the stable, toward a room he'd rent for the night, and maybe, just maybe, for a few nights after that. Years later, travelers passing through Ashford would sometimes hear the story about a cowboy who'd kept a promise to a little girl, about a family that had been broken and put back together, about a hat that had changed hands and meant more than leather and thread ever should. Some said the cowboy stayed, some said he drifted on, the way men like him always did. But the ones who knew, the ones who'd been there, would tell you the truth. They'd tell you about the ranch just outside town, where a woman named Anna raised her children and kept the books for the local cattle association. About a boy named Samuel who grew tall and strong and never forgot the night a stranger carried him 20 miles. About a girl named Lily who wore a battered hat and learned to ride better than most men twice her age. And if you asked them about the cowboy, about Cole Madsen, they'd smile and point toward the ridge at sunset, where you could sometimes see a figure on horseback, silhouetted against the sky, watching, waiting, keeping promises no one else remembered. And if the wind was right, and if you listened close, you might hear the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Not running, not leaving, just moving forward, the way a man does when he's finally figured out where he belongs. The hat stayed with Lily until the day she passed it on to her own daughter, along with the story of the cowboy who gave his word and never broke it. And on quiet evenings when the light turned copper and the shadows grew long, she'd stand on the porch and look out at the valley, remembering the way he'd knelt in the dust and handed her something more valuable than gold. A promise, a purpose, a place to stand. And in her heart, she'd whisper the same thing she'd said that first night when he'd ridden off into the dark. "Thank you." The wind carried it away, out across the flats, toward the horizon where the land met the sky, and somewhere out there, maybe close, maybe far, A man in a worn hat heard it and smiled, because some promises don't end when you keep them. They just become part of who you are, and they follow you, quiet and steady, like dust on the wind.